Hello and welcome to the Alamocenary Moment. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Brad Hathcock. Welcome back.
It's been a little bit since the last time we recorded. We were just talking a little sports merch before we started. I figured we'd just continue the conversation because you said you collect like hockey jerseys from all over the league, and then if you look at our video podcast right now, Bradley's gonna show his Panthers jersey. Um,
Now, this one's for my wife. I do have my own.
ah,
That's a actual current player. Yager actually went and played for the Florida Panthers for like one season, um, and he was a very prominent Penguin, and she's a Penguins fan. So
oh, okay. Well,
he's
I
still
mean,
playing. Actually, he's like 52 or something like that, and still playing over in
jeez,
Europe. He owns his own team, and I think
plays
he
for
put up
it.
like 40 points this season in a it's like a
Oh,
Czech league.
that's not bad.
I mean, the talent level's not going to be what it is in the NHL, but um, you know,
I do. Also, listeners probably don't know that in the time since we last recorded, I've suddenly become a hockey fan myself. I'm watching the playoffs along with you and enjoying not only learning about the sport and the rules, because it's not really complicated. It just seems overwhelming when you first start watching it. I mean,
sure,
it's easier to understand than football,
it's a very fast-paced game.
right?
If you compare hockey to other sports like football, where they play every play is only like a maximum of like 20 seconds, um, or I would say basketball is probably one of the more continuous sports, but to an extent, right? Because every time you make a basket, you kind of have to fall back onto defense. But the play doesn't really stop for basketball unless there's like a whistle or something. But how many times do people get to shoot free throws
A
from the
lot.
foul line and stuff, which gives you time to rest. With hockey, you have to have a 23-man roster, and pretty much people are playing. Miro Heiskanen the other night played 31 minutes, which is a ridiculous amount of minutes for a hockey player. Like when I played in college, half of the kids on our defense were like ineligible. So I ended up dropping back from forward to playing defense, and we only had four defensemen, so instead of six. So you are just constantly out there, and you're playing 30 minutes a game regardless because you have to be out there. There's no choice, and it's tough. And I played at a low level, like Division 3 club, ice hockey. So imagine doing that at the NHL level, and you do see that sometimes. A defenseman will get kicked out of a game or something, so you end up having five defensemen, and generally you don't have like a forward drop back to play a different position, but it does happen.
Yeah, I it was interesting because I started the playoffs completely blind, and then I found myself gravitating towards the Panthers just by coincidence because I was as they were the underdog in the first series against the Bruins.
Of
I,
course.
yeah, I was like, oh man, this is really compelling to watch. Like, I was really getting into it, and then I was like, oh, it's a Florida team. Wow, like just I'm a Dolphins fan, right? It's like kind of weird. And then I was like, oh man, this underdog goes and beats the best record ever, team, the most goals, most wins, and then I'm like, damn, like I think I could definitely seriously root for this team that I don't know anything about really, like
Sure.
because I'm learning, and
The
and and, it's,
Panthers the
and I didn't
Panthers
even
get a
know they
bad
were in
rap.
Miami.
They get a bad rap because most of their fans just come from other places, right? Like, because obviously people vacation there or they snowbird down in Florida. So they don't have a consistent fan base, I would say. And that's tough for the league, but they've done well in the past, making it. Now they've I don't believe have ever won a Stanley Cup, and this year I wouldn't say that they can win the Stanley Cup. I wouldn't mind it for sure. I do like the Florida Panthers. They have some really good players and stuff.
And they've been the underdog twice now, and they're
Well, they
fighting.
they will be. So the way that the Panthers made the playoffs is Basically the Penguins did so bad down the stretch that they just couldn't catch the Panthers. Like they won, I think, on points like the last day. They didn't have to win to get in. Basically, Pittsburgh just ended up shitting the bed, and that's why the Panthers in. So they got in by luck. But
Yeah,
sometimes, like, there's a saying in the NHL is like, just get in the playoffs. We have seen 8 seeds win the Stanley Cup. The LA Kings did it back in
yeah.
2012.
I've learned that.
It does happen. So
Oh, and
just get in and you can win.
yeah, you beat the team that had the most goals and most wins in NHL history. That is, and it was in a game 7. Like that is a massive accomplishment, and it was in overtime too. I mean, that's
So there's
crazy.
there's a curse. There's a curse of winning the President's Trophy. So the President's Trophy is who has the best record in the regular season, and that was hands down the Bruins, like hands down. And there's just a stigma to winning the President's Trophy. Like you end up getting eliminated in the first round, or at least definitely not winning the Stanley Cup, and that seems to have played out again this year. I mean, the Bruins had such a ridiculously good season. For them to go out in the first round of the playoffs is just unfathomable, especially to a team that just squeaked in. But they got hot. They
Hey, that happens. That happens
yeah,
in
they
every
went
sport.
down 3 games to 1, and they got hot and came back and won 3 straight. Now they did lose last night to the Toronto Maple Leafs, but they're already up 3 games to now 1.
Yeah, they were playing for their lives, so of
It's
course they
always
came
hard
in.
to get that clincher, but hockey's such an exciting sport. I'm glad that you're getting into it. The regular season's tough because there's a lot, but I've
Yeah.
I've said to you, one of the things I'm jealous of because I'm such a huge hockey fan. I'll watch any game at any time. Um, I'm jealous because you get to see every game.
Oh yeah, because you're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast.
Right. So the games that for me start at 10 o'clock are starting at 7 for you, and that's when the East Coast games start for me. So I get to watch
Yeah,
those, but you can watch every game. And dude,
and
sometimes
oh my
there's like
god, dude,
7, 8 games on in one night.
the ones that you didn't get to see, those were the most exciting games I've seen in the playoffs. And so it's kind of like crazy, because there's some crazy games, but
A lot of people are complaining about this not being that exciting of a playoffs because it's like teams are getting blown out
oh well,
in
that's
games. So like
true,
you're seeing 6-1 games.
but not
There
all of
was
them.
just an 8-4 game. And it's like people want to see goal scoring. Okay, there's been talks of making the nets wider or like a little bit taller and shrinking the pads for goalies and stuff to increase scoring. So now you're seeing this increased scoring that the non-hardcore fans like myself want to see. Like I'm cool with a 1-0 game. I'm cool with a 2-1 game. Like that shit doesn't bother me. But the people who want to see scoring are like, well, this is boring
Yeah,
because you're seeing blowouts.
I don't like that. I don't want to take up the whole podcast talking about hockey because I know we have listeners who probably couldn't care about less about it, but I just they need to. I think they need to keep it the way it is. And yeah, there's been a lot of goals scored, but that's basically only the Hurricanes doing that. I mean, it's not the other games, but
Well, that's not true. Dallas has seen games that are like
oh
six
yeah,
6-2 and
six
7-2,
yeah.
shit like that. So Dallas versus Seattle. Seattle's another really big surprise. It's their second season ever, and they're sitting here in the second round of the playoffs now after defeating the Stanley Cup champions in the
Yeah.
first round. So it's been a really good playoff so far, in my opinion.
It's been very exciting. Yeah. Well, I came back from the Ontario Convention Center over the weekend. I went down to my first video game expo, which was kind of cool. I've never gone to an event where I haggled. I'm not a haggler. So going in there and grabbing like 3 games and going like, "Will you do 25 on this?" and asking them to knock 5 off this or whatever was kind of exciting. Because that place was friggin' packed, and there's so much going on. I just thought I'd share that. Do you um since the last time we recorded, there has been so much news. It's crazy. Is there anything you want to talk about first?
I don't have any one particular topic on hand. I
Well,
guess we can
England
kind of
has a new
talk.
king.
Who cares? We fought an entire war to not give a fuck about who the King of England is, right? So
I
people were
don't.
complaining that Biden didn't go. Jill Biden went, but that Joe Biden didn't go. We don't have to care about this anymore. They virtually have no power to begin with.
I
And then
just think
people were
it's
complaining that it wasn't diverse enough.
okay. Well, that's insane because it's a freaking monarch. But I just think it's interesting the history of the coronation because they've had like the first few kings of England had these coronations, and then there were like little bits of tradition that were added to it. So there's like the fucking magic stone from Scotland, and they sit on the magic stone, and there's the scepter of blah 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 that so and so used one time, and there's this old wooden chair that had like writing from one of the kids during one of the coronation. Like it's really interesting from that perspective. But I agree with you. I don't really give a shit about the king. I mean, God
How
save the
could
king, I
you?
guess. Why would I? Yeah. So that happened. Another huge bank collapsed, but there haven't been any since then. But there are still bank runs happening. The interest rate was raised. We're being led by the oldest people ever to walk the earth, and it's not good.
Yeah, I think Pac West saw like $1.8 billion worth of withdrawals over the span of like a couple days, something like that. And I actually read that they were kind of debating. I think the article said that the White House was debating like stopping withdrawals from banks temporarily,
Man,
just to
that's
stop the
risky.
collapses. Like,
That's risky because if you reopen it back up, you'll make it worse. Maybe.
sure, but we kind of saw some of this happen in Canada with the whole trucker thing, right? Like they were
Yeah.
basically blocking people from using the funds that they have
They
and
froze the accounts.
freezing people's accounts because they didn't like what they were saying.
It's so evil.
And now you have the federal government potentially stopping you from withdrawing your money from your bank in order to stop its collapse. Never mind the fact that the bank was probably making some very poor decisions, obviously, with the money, which is why they were collapsing partially in the first place. But to restrict access to people's money, like this should be definitely the warning, the shot across the bow for CBDCs and like the whole Fed Now instant payment situation. Like if they can just prevent you from taking your money whenever you want, and let's face it, they can. I mean, the banks will listen to the federal government for sure, especially if it
What choice
prevents
do they
their own
have?
collapse.
Yeah. Well,
It should be understood that people don't have unfettered access to their money at any point. So CBDC should be even more of a red flag for people, in my opinion.
that's a conversation that's going to come eventually, but I don't think regular people are ready for that one yet. It's going to blow their minds though.
Sadly, people have been talking about this for a long time. I mean, Joe Rogan fucking talked about it and how much of an issue it is. And you and I have actually talked about this on the podcast but way before. I think even last year,
Yeah.
like in some of the earlier podcasts that we've done.
Well, everything we say
And
is predictions for what happens.
and sadly, we've been pretty fucking correct so far, which is hilarious because people probably think we're nutty, but we've actually been right about a lot of this shit. So I just think it's really a warning shot to people, and they need to understand how big of a deal this actually is. But the problem is that the media doesn't really talk about it, and unfortunately, people only consume mass media for the most part. So.
Well, speaking of mass media, I watched clips on Twitter because I don't have CNN. I could never be bothered to watch any news channel these days. Former president of the United States goes on CNN, and he was devilishly good, and not for the right reasons. I'm being objective here. The way he works a room is so he's a stand-up comic who just happened to be, he's just with media in general. He he answers these questions, and it's partly Caitlin Collins' fault. She did a good job, but it's partly her fault that she asked the question she did, because all he talked about was his grievances, and he made himself sound like the victim again, because all he talks about is 2020.
Sure, but that's on CNN.
She asked those questions.
Right. They didn't hold his feet to the fire on basically anything regarding like policy or where
Nothing,
Republicans
Brad.
stand on anything really. She just
Roe and Ukraine,
right.
barely.
And but how is your question? Oh, well, do you want Russia or Ukraine to win the war? And his answer was, well, I don't. It's not about winning and losing. He's like, I just want there to be peace. And people are trying to say like, oh, he doesn't want Ukraine to win. Like, fuck off. Because
if he doesn't
it's
want
not
Ukraine
about
to,
winning and losing.
If he doesn't want Ukraine to win, why doesn't he just say it? And my theory is it's because he's on Russia's side, or he supports Russia. I really do think that, because it's so easy to say that. I mean, maybe you're saying I could do it in 24 hours, and I don't want to spoil the negotiations right now on a town hall, and maybe that's an excuse, but that's not how his brain works.
No, absolutely not. And for anyone to think that, 24 hours he would have this solved, like that's bullshit, obviously. But... like that's ridiculous and fake. But for him to say like it's not about winning and losing, because are there winners and losers if basically everything goes back to the status quo, the way that it was prior to the invasion?
I mean,
like
people
would you say there's a win and a loss there? I mean, I would say Ukraine won and Russia lost because they gained nothing, but we had all this loss of life because both sides are losing so many people for nothing.
And he said,
if it ends in a status quo,
like,
right?
That's what makes it so devilish to me. I don't like his answer, but he made it a soundbite that's easy to digest for the people who are going to be voting in the Republican primary, and that's what this is for.
And that's what he does. But this is CNN's fault. Like, the only reason they had him on is because their ratings are such dog shit.
I doubt this did it for them. But you know what, Brad? It's wild to me because they spent 4 years, and I'm not like telling you anything you don't already know. I'm not talking out of school here. But, like, they spent 4 or 5 years just freaking out about this dude. I can't believe how it happened. And they will never, ever admit that they were airing empty podiums of him at his rallies in 2015 and 2016. And they're doing it again. It's crazy.
They need him. Like, their ratings are so bad.
And he needs them.
Yeah, I mean, Trump needs the media, and he needs CNN to treat him like shit, because then Republicans are just going to eat it up.
Yeah, and they do.
His base is going to eat it up, and they absolutely ate it up last night.
He said some funny shit, man. That's the tough part. He's funny.
He's cuckoo as shit, man. And last night I didn't really get to watch it, but I went to grab a beer with my father-in-law, and it was on TV, and we were both just sitting there talking about how bad he is, but how it's kind of funny to watch him. And sometimes he like makes a salient point, or like comes off as pretty normal and like regular, but we know that that's not true, because he also comes off as really wild and outlandish most of the time too. So like it's really hard to get a read on which Trump is going to show up. Is he going to stay on book, or is he going off book? And I mean, who the fuck prints out tweets? And so did he know they were going to ask him about that, or was he fed like the questions beforehand?
I think neither. I think he just...
CNN has a history of doing that. Come on.
CNN does have a history of doing that, but it only hurts them. Anyway, this came on the heels of him being found guilty in a civil lawsuit with E. Jean Carroll, who is herself a very questionable person who is probably crazy. And
okay, so to that point, you cannot be guilty in a lawsuit like that. There is no guilty or non-guilty verdict.
Damages?
Yeah, it's liable and non-liable.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for correcting me.
That's a big thing that people have been saying. They're like, oh, he's guilty. He's a rapist and all this other stuff.
I definitely don't think he's guilty of rape.
He was never guilty of rape. Okay, technically speaking, he's never been guilty of rape. He was held liable for physical abuse.
And he ended up paying her, or is expected to appeal, but the verdict is $2 million. Now
That number will probably come down, I imagine.
yeah, and it's, man, that whole story is fascinating on its own, because she wrote that book and then she didn't expect anybody to actually like read it, and then she had this like anecdote about it, and then people were like, oh, well, why don't we get you on the air? And then all of a sudden the guy, the founder of LinkedIn, was like, I'll fund your entire lawsuit. So I mean, but it was always impossible to prove, because you can't have a statute of limitations if the person who's making the accusation doesn't have the date in mind that would inform the statute of limitations. So that was always kind of the problem with her. But anyway, that was interesting, and I think that came up last night, and he just kind of brushed it off. But
Sure. And I mean, what's he gonna do, really? Like, he just has to brush it off. There's nothing he can do about it.
His deposition,
he was
though,
found
man.
liable.
Did you hear the
There's nothing he
deposition?
can do. No, I didn't.
It was crazy. He was like, yeah, like, that's just the way things are for celebrities, and and then they asked him about like the grab the genitals comment he made on that Access Hollywood tape, and he's like, well, we're celebrities, like play by different rules. I mean, that's not verbatim, but he was kind of like admitting to it, which was like very bizarre.
He's not wrong, dude. Celebrities are held to a different class. Like,
Well, yeah, I know.
And celebrities fall right in line with like political elites. Okay, there's rules for them and laws for them, and then there's laws for us peasants and us common folk. We're not elite. Okay, I don't care how middle class or upper middle class or even upper class you are. If you're not an elite, then there's poor laws for you. Sure, you might be able to afford a better lawyer to maybe lessen your sentence or whatever, goes on there, but ultimately there's just completely different laws for people like you and me versus people like them. Okay, like, this whole situation is not going to touch Teflon Don one bit. It's going to roll right off him. Like the water off a duck's ass. Like, it just rolls right off.
This was one of the four. There's three other ones. The Alvin Bragg one's obviously trash, but the Georgia, and then the federal documents ones. We'll see.
Well, see, but they asked him about that last night. They can't do anything with the federal documents, because if you prosecute him for those, you have to prosecute Biden for them.
Okay, so here's the one
You have
caveat. Do you have to? Can a sitting U.S. president be charged for that particular crime?
Well, pretty much a sitting U.S. president seems like he can't be charged for any crime.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, could they charge?
There's no actual precedent for it, because whenever charges are going to potentially come, like going back towards like Nixon, you just resign.
Well,
to stop the precedent, basically.
There is like a precedent for like you impeach somebody if there's evidence of wrongdoing, but that's not like a legal thing. That's a
wrongdoing
thing.
Isn't criminal action. Right? Like, they're not in a court of law. They're basically just telling you were being unethical.
You know what
That was why.
I agree with
like,
you.
what Bill Clinton did wasn't illegal, but it was unethical for
that's what I'm saying,
a
though,
sitting
like,
president.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm trying to get my thought out. You understand where I'm coming from, right? Which is, you have a president who's now a private citizen who broke the law, and then you have a sitting president who broke the law for the same thing. Can the sitting president be treated the same way as the private citizen? That's all I wonder.
But even if you were a president, okay, there's still a precedent that has not been set for charging former presidents with criminal activity.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Because then you have to go back and look at the other crimes that still have statutes, like open statutes of limitations, and prosecute those former presidents for those crimes.
That's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. Yeah,
like you would have to, and if again, going back to Nixon, they pardoned him like immediately, because
Gerald Ford pardoned him. Yeah,
right. That was a situation where they could have likely brought up criminal charges against Nixon, and they pardoned him before they even had to. They basically were like, no, we're gonna just let you off the hook with this shit, because they don't want to set a precedent to be able to make presidents complicit in crimes.
But Brad, I will say this, and you're completely right. But Democrats will do things not thinking about the outcome down the road, and that's what when Harry Reid got rid of the filibuster, that overturned Roe versus Wade, right? And he wanted and I think Democrats are susceptible to doing something like that just to
Sure.
get the guy. I mean,
Sure.
they might want to just get Trump. I understand the urge. I really do. I wish I'd never had to hear from him again either. Like I get it. But
I wholly agree with that. I wholly agree with that. Actually, one of the things I was talking to my my father-in-law about last night was that, and this goes government wide, they don't look at the unintended consequences of their actions. It's like them coming out with the data saying, oh, well, since we've done the student loan pause, more people can buy cars and more people can buy houses and all this other shit, right? Great. Bravo. Bravo. We can do all this.
What
But
happens when you start
now,
them back up?
in August, September, basically, when you start your payments back up, now you have a car payment and because of inflation, people are seeing $700 a month car payments and shit like that.
And
So
a recession looming.
now you have even less fucking money. So you're either going to default on your student loans, default on your car, which can actually be repossessed,
Which could
or
happen.
default on your home,
The
which can
car
be
thing's a bubble.
repossessed. I mean, we have dude, everything's a bubble right now. I shared a brief article with you about credit swaps, basically being like the highest that they've ever
Oh
been.
yes, yeah.
So we have a credit bubble. There's more credit card debt in this country than ever before in history.
That's wild.
Couple that with the housing market that's going, and some people are like really delusional and they're like, oh, it's not going to crash like it did in 2008. Sure, but it doesn't have to.
Right.
It
And that's
doesn't.
my point. Is that it might not be the housing market, but usually every bubble is a different thing that you never saw coming. And so, like in '87, it was a different thing, and when it was 2000 or the what do they call it, the .com bubble?
Yeah.
And then the housing crisis. These are all extremely different events,
Sure.
and so it'll probably be a different event.
And we are seeing these things. The crypto bubble basically is popping now because crypto was steadily like gaining speed and interest, right? And it was heavily unregulated. Well, now I just sent you another crypto company is collapsing and filing for bankruptcy because of the regulation that they're starting to impart, which regulation does that, right? It kind of eliminates businesses, and then the ones who can survive that tend to thrive on that.
Those businesses are the ones who often drive the regulation,
Sure.
so they win.
FTX, now this Bittrex, Voyager did bankruptcy. All of these companies are going under, and it's a bubble. It's a bubble that might not affect everyone, but these companies that are going under, like people are losing their life savings because they're throwing it into crypto on trying to make quick money, make generational wealth. Like who doesn't want that?
It's just a gamble. Okay, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna switch gears here. Speaking of a gamble, there are a record number of people migrating to the United States as we speak. There is a literal emergency on our southern border, and Title 42 expires tonight. And it is a humanitarian crisis. It is crazy. I know you've seen a lot of it, but there's drone footage of just seas of humanity.
Sure.
And they've sent National Guard troops down. The feds, Biden sent down troops.
1,500. Yep.
I don't know how it's going to shake out.
So it's not unprecedented. I actually was looking at that. I had questioned whether or not troops had been sent to the border before, and it seems like the last 3 presidents have all sent troops to the border in order to try and fix this crisis, right? It's been a crisis I think as long as we've both been alive, for sure. And every year it just seems to get more and more of a crisis, but when's it going to pop? Who knows? I've seen videos of border patrol turning people back. They've put like razor wire around areas that don't exactly have like a real like a border or a wall or a fence or anything like that. And these people are crossing a river and they just meet this razor wire, and some of them are wearing like life jackets. I'm sure you have to be lucky enough to get one of those. And they're just turning them around and sending them back.
It's really sad, and I have nothing but compassion for the people who are just trying to get in this country to have their to make it. But it's a I keep wondering if a lot of this stuff is like it's a ticking time bomb for Joe Biden, because for the media has done such a good job of completely covering everything and hiding it in a way that makes the public not seem aware of what's happening, and then all of a sudden you have like a mass migration movement and crisis on the border, and you've got a recession that just pops out of nowhere because nobody's going to see it coming, and all this other stuff. His apparently all of his kids got bribe checks. They've got records showing that all the kids got money from companies in China and Romania, and there's a lot of stuff kind of happening, and there's going to be depositions, and there's going to be a discovery when they go with Hunter Biden's for his paternity thing, because I think they want child support. So, yeah. But you laugh, right?
Remember,
and that is,
no, but
is
remember,
funny.
I talked about that. I was like, Hunter Biden doesn't want his little fuck baby or whatever to like, take his last name, and now he's going through all this other shit. Like,
and if in the course of going through all of that, they're gonna know Hunter Biden's finances. At that point, they're gonna know, how is he making money?
Well,
what
now
is he doing to make
he's
money?
Trying to sue Fox News for like $25 million or something like that for defamation. I mean, good luck with that one.
Defamation has a high bar for a reason, but
they're supposedly looking at bringing federal gun charges against him because he
any day now
is a felon, I believe.
Yes, he's a felon who lied.
Yeah, and that they want to bring these gun charges against him.
Well, the gun charges that he lied to get the gun. He lied about his drug use, which is a felony. But that's a ticking time bomb as well, and we don't know what they would find if they really started going through the legal means to find out what Hunter Biden did or did not do. And I'm not saying that Joe Biden is the guilty one here. What I'm saying is his entire family enriched themselves off of his name when he was in and out of office as vice president, and it's despicable that they even take money from like the Chinese Communist Party. That's a whole other issue. But
well, they're still doing it on low levels. Like they were, Hunter Biden fancies himself an artist, and they were taking his art and hanging it in rooms in the White House and then selling it for large sums of money because it was in the White House. Like, I mean, that seems so stupid, but like it's actually happening. And people don't look at this kind of shit. I understand why people don't follow the news like you and I do, because it's fucking depressing.
But there's this stuff that the media has done such a good job of covering for him, and it's made it so that when the shit actually hits the fan, it's going to be really bad for him. And I saw him the other night, and he looked very, very bad. He looked extremely old. Like, he just looked tired, and he was out of it, and he wasn't speaking clearly, and he didn't know what the fuck he was saying. And you've got like these people that are like coming out and telling him like the Easter Bunny, or like Hunter Biden sleeping on a cot next to him when they went to Ireland. Like, there's things happening. Hunter Biden's living at the White House right now. Did you know that?
I did not.
He's living there right now. I don't know how many family members are living there. More than one, I'm sure.
But is he not allowed to?
He's allowed to. I don't care who. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I think Hunter Biden is living there because him and Jill Biden are trying to help Pops by like propping him up. I don't think he's all there anymore. He's lost a step over the past year.
You think Hunter's giving him like a meth drip every day just to pep him up a little bit?
He only works between 10 and 4, dude. And he doesn't even stay at the White House on the weekends. He goes to Delaware. I've mentioned this before, but you spend your entire life being president and you don't even want to hang out in the Oval Office? Like,
oh, sure.
Something's wrong.
That's because I told you that he goes there and gets like blood transfusions from babies and stuff to like stay young. And
I mean,
these might be jokes, people. Might be.
Yeah, might be. Look into it. It's just, I'm only bringing all this up to say, like, something's really wrong. If all this shit all happens at once, recession, the migrant crisis, which we don't know how it's going to shake out, Hunter Biden, the money, where all the money's going, Maybe he gets impeached for it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he gets charged.
I don't know about that. And I wanted to actually make this point while we were talking like more in depth about that. I don't see a time where that oversight committee is going to actually do anything about it. I would imagine that they make some kind of backdoor deal regarding the debt ceiling to just kind of let this go away. I can definitely see that.
Thank you for bringing up the debt ceiling. That's like the fourth ticking time bomb. I don't know, man.
That's how politics are done these days, man. Behind closed doors, like
that committee, though.
Backdoor deals.
I don't mind backdoor deals in government. I really don't, because when it's public, it's usually when it goes bad. That's the people who got killed in the French Revolution. If they wanted people haggling them on while they were debating the ideas, but when it's this committee and they're investigating Hunter Biden, I don't see that as a part of the negotiation on the debt ceiling. I really do think that there's more to come. I don't think it's going away, but
I think we're in a very, very disturbing, tough time
shaky
right now with politics. I mean, the whole thing in my eyes, and I'm sure your eyes, is kind of like everything's unraveling all at once.
Yes.
We're getting less and less support for Ukraine, which, my position on that, people are kind of flipping on that. The world, the geopolitics in the world just don't seem to be going in a good direction. We're seeing Israel and Palestine fighting again, and
well, Palestine's not a real country, but that aside.
But I mean, you're seeing like everything.
Don't forget China.
I mean, China's bad. I know
Making
on Breaking
deals.
Points they just kind of talked about could China actually like decline and collapse, like Peter Zeihan was talking about, because they saw like a 46% decline in population, or projected population, which is insane. I mean, India became a more populated country than China, and it's like a third of the size. I mean,
compare China and Japan, and also for China, we have immigration to the United States from all over the world. Like, we are a dynamic economy. China is not. They don't allow people to move there. It's all Chinese people that live there.
Well, why would you want to fucking move there? I mean, they're communists.
Well, yeah, of course. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's literally no incentive for them to reverse course because it's already too late. And the one-child policy fucked them. And yeah, it's scary when you think about a China that declines. That's scary.
Yeah, but at the same time, like what is it? Are they declining, and are they going to collapse, or are they going to invade Taiwan? Like, it's geopolitics is so wild right now. I mean, the world is, according, from your and my standpoint, in pretty much utter chaos. Like, everything happening in Sudan with warring factions there, like, obviously all the slave trade in Libya, like everything around the world is not
Pakistan.
Great.
They just arrested their Imran Khan.
Mm-hmm. And they are gonna have to figure out like what they're doing for a new leader in Pakistan. South Africa just sent Russia weapons, is from what we were seeing. Like, it's tough to talk about like what the world's going to look like in a decade, because obviously we don't know, but like there's so many things on the brink.
We're so lucky that we have two oceans on our side and we have two countries, north and south, and that's it. That makes us so isolated from all this shit. But
we have one country, and then we have like just one area run by cartels, because let's face it, they don't really have a government, right?
They have a government in name, but yeah, it's cartel country down there. And our president is declining. He's mentally declining. He's not going to get better. He's only going to get worse. And he already looks bad. He looked bad the other night. Yeah.
And Trump's actually polling higher than Biden now, which
people don't even know that.
Happen.
Biden had like a 36% approval rating, and it doesn't surprise me at all. Like, everything he's done to help inflation has not done anything to help inflation. Right. It's coming back again.
But I think it was in like head-to-head polling that
Trump is beating him.
Yeah, Trump is beating him, and it's like, how bad
crazy.
Is that? I mean, the Democrats want to run Biden again because he beat Trump the first time, and they think that that's a recipe for success the second time. But now you know what Biden's made of. So can you just vote for Biden again? Because, I mean, let's face it, the largest majority of people voted for him just because he wasn't Trump. But can people get behind that again, knowing like what has happened so far and where the state of this country is at and the world? I mean, as we know, like the United States has the most political pull out of any country in the entire world. Like what does that look like if you have Joe Biden again, who is basically on death's door to begin with?
And that's some we can't know that for sure. I frankly I think that Trump lost independents and he's never getting them back. And I did see a poll recently that there are now more independents than there have ever been before, with people just leaving both parties.
I think it's like
That's me.
59% of people now consider themselves independent.
Yeah, and it's a huge problem for both these parties because they are. That's why I hate the primary system so much, because they're running. The radicals in each party, who are a small subset, pick the candidates, and then me and you, fucked because we have to. It's like choose either one or don't choose at all. I mean, that sucks. That's not fun.
Sure.
Like,
But this is the drum that I've been beating for a long time, man. Like I understand that the Libertarian Party isn't exactly the most warming party that people, you know, gravitate towards because they believe in unfettered capitalism and things like that. And there are things I like about the Libertarian Party, and there's things that I don't like. I vote Libertarian because, quite frankly, they're the only third party who can even get to that 5% national vote threshold in order to give them automatic ballot access and funding for campaigns. That's why I vote for them. I don't believe in everything that the Libertarian Party holds dear. Like I just don't like. And
well, I don't believe in anything that the other two parties hold dear either.
Right. And that's the problem is like you're demonized for being a centrist these days, and that's where you should be. Like you should be open to different ideas and changing your mind on things. And that's not the way politics works now. Like again, I was talking to my father-in-law about it last night. You there's no belief in anything of the other side. Like you have to toe party lines or you're not going to get the funding for your next campaign. And like it's always all about just getting reelected instead of actually standing for something.
And I think that this is where, look, it's crazy because I think a Democrat could run against Biden and win it. I mean, I think that's evidence in RFK Jr. as batshit crazy as he is. That's evident in the polling. I think that there could be a candidate that's strong enough to beat Trump, right? I
First of
think
all,
that's possible.
RFK is hilarious.
He is hilarious, but
he believes that the CIA will kill people, and like, come on,
I mean,
face it.
He's like Trump in that he's crazy, but every once in a while he says something that rings true.
But the problem is the Democrats are refusing to allow primary debates. And they're already rigging the primary so that Biden's going to win all the states he needs to win with no debates so that nobody else even gets a shot at winning a primary.
If he and that's they could do that, whatever. That's the party rules. So like fuck
But
them.
see, that's the problem, right?
But it's not our problem.
But it is our problem.
It
is our
in the sense that
problem because
we
this is what
yeah.
gets you in the two-party system. With closed primaries and refusing to have debates, ultimately what you end up running into is, the way I look at it at least, is it's voter suppression. You're not giving me viable candidates, so I'm more likely to just abstain and stay home or vote for a third party because you're basically suppressing my willingness to vote for one of these candidates because they're all dog shit.
That's what makes me think Trump can win now, is that Biden is getting worse, and the people who don't want either of them, they may have voted for Biden last time. They may just stay home this time. I mean,
look, man, I said this back in, I believe it was 2016, and I voted for Gary Johnson. Okay, was he the best candidate? Absolutely not. But he was really funny because he went on TV and somebody said that smoking pot can increase the percentage that you have a heart attack, and he just was like pretended to have a heart attack on TV, right? Like he was funny, whatever, and he wasn't the two pieces of shit that we had. Well, the Libertarian Party actually sued the CPD. It's like the something for presidential debates. I forget what the C stands for. And
Committee.
yeah, and they basically, and he said that the polling data and stuff, like their requirements to getting into the debates, was not fair. CNN actually held out data from the 18 to 35 polling data for the Libertarian Party, basically, which is the largest age bracket that you have, and that kept them like basically out of one of the abilities to get on the debate stage. And so they sued the CPD, and the CPD went and said, we're a private entity and we can make whatever rules we want. So, and they're made up of Republicans and Democrats. Well, the Republicans pulled out of the CPD. So they aren't even active amongst that anymore. And so
It's falling apart.
that's what I'm saying. Like, how is something as politically driven as the CPD, who determines debates, they determine your ability to debate, which is a very good predictor of who can do what and actually hear people's opinions and what they stand for on the debate stage. Now, granted, most politicians lie when they're debating anyway, or, in Kamala Harris's point of view, they, basically tell Biden that he's a pedophile and then turns around and becomes vice president. But,
Oh God.
you're actively suppressing people's ability to hear different points of view. And then so how are they going to ever get to 5%? How are we ever going to get a third party when the two parties are holding them back by basically saying, well, we're a private entity? How? This is about politics. This is about the government. How are you a private entity? So that just makes me think even more. The government is just a business. They have no incentive to deliver on anything that they talk about or that they have to do, and you have to keep paying them under threat of going to prison if you don't. Tell me how that's not theft, how that's not extortion. You explain that to me. Because that's what's happening. We're private. We're a private entity. We can make whatever rules we want. That all amounts to ultimately voter suppression.
On that cheery note, yeah, I don't know, man.
I'd be interested to see if people think that, like, what they think of if I'm actually like a happy person or not, because I'm always like the doomsayer of
No.
our podcast.
I know people that are out there who listen to this podcast, and they've told me specifically that they don't always agree with everything we say, and I appreciate that because they're willing to tell me that.
Sure.
I don't think you're being downcast at all. Look, some podcasts are more fun than others. We are just addressing the reality of the situation, and I all I'm seeing is a repeat of the past two presidential cycles. It's repeating again.
Sure.
And I hate it because it was so bad for this country both times. It was so bad because the first time everybody thought he couldn't have won, and he was a Russian plant, and it tore people up, and that was all fake and false and not true at all. And then it goes the other way, and they say, oh, there's these, like, you don't trust your neighbor anymore. You think, oh, my neighbor's going to make up ballots. They don't count the ballots right. Like, I don't trust my neighbors to count the ballots in a society. Like, yeah, okay, Jesus, man. Like, that's pretty crazy too. So those two things were bad.
Absolutely. I've said to a friend of mine, and he's very progressive, very, very progressive, and he said that he didn't like Biden either, but that he's not Trump, basically. He's one of those. Like, he just kind of,
Anything but.
yeah. And he's like, I won't always vote for Democrats just because of this, like because of Trump and all this other stuff. And I said, they have you already. Like they have you. You basically swore that you would never support anyone but Bernie Sanders. And then you just turned around and said, well, we have to vote for Hillary Clinton because she's not Trump. And then you did the same thing with Biden. And I said to him, I was like, you once told me that you would not just vote for Democrats because of not being Trump. I said, but they have you forever now. You will vote nothing but Democrat. Forever.
It's so easy. Yeah, it's so easy because all they do is go, you know what? That DeSantis, probably worse than Trump. You should watch out.
Oh,
and
dude, they already
they've
did
already
it.
started doing it, yeah.
They already put that out there. And DeSantis hasn't even declared that he's running. They're already painting him as basically a worse Trump.
Well, look at Nikki Haley. She wouldn't even go after Trump at all. After what he did, she's the one woman in the race who's actually leveraging her sex because she's a female running for the Republican nomination. She won't touch him.
You know, she actually called him before she declared to see if it was okay.
But he's not going to pick her for vice president. That's the thing she thinks is going to happen, and I don't see that happening.
I could see that. There's been people out there going, we should have Trump and Robert and like RFK run on one ticket, and
people
RFK
are crazy,
actually
dude.
came out and said
said no. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all the, I don't know. That's all the stuff in the news. There's other stuff, but I don't even. This conversation has made me feel disgusting. So let's go to a lighter topic. Are you? You've been delving into Mel Gibson's filmography, which I can appreciate as one of the great filmmakers.
God, he's so good.
He's so good.
I mean, I watched some of the movies I won't go back and watch because I actually watched them probably within the last like year or two. So like Mad Max, the first one.
Great movie.
Don't need to watch it. I watched it more recently, and it is really good. It doesn't hold up as well.
It's rough.
Yeah, because it's a pretty gritty movie, and it's just not as like
low budget.
Yeah, it's just a low budget film. But to go back and actually get to see like where he started and stuff, like I don't know. I started talking to you guys about what like The Patriot and a couple other movies, and I was like, man, he's got some really good fucking movies.
As both a writer, director, and actor.
Yeah. So I watched Apocalypto.
What'd you think of that?
I liked it. I actually really liked it.
I think that movie is authentic in a way that most filmmakers wouldn't do, which is like they got actual people speaking Mayan or whatever, and he wanted to make a chase movie that was different.
When it first came out, at that time, and I don't even remember what year it came out, but I didn't watch many movies where I had to read subtitles. Just, I don't know, wasn't my thing. I ended up getting past that, so I don't mind it as much. But it was pretty good, man. I can't complain. It was actually pretty violent without being like too gory or anything like that.
It could have been gorier.
Yeah, for sure. I thought they did a pretty good job there. But the one thing was at one point this like jaguar's like eating, or this panther's like eating a guy's face off, and it looked bad. I mean, it looked like
the special effects look rough.
Yeah, it looked like
it's pretty old.
Took like a stuffed jaguar and with like a mouth that moves and just like put it on this guy's face, and somebody was going, oh.
It did come out in 2006, so it's been a long time.
It was rough, but it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, for sure. So I'm jumping in. You know,
You watched Signs.
I watched Signs again.
Great movie.
I tried to watch The Passion of the Christ.
So you and I had an interesting, we had an interesting discussion because I didn't like that movie either, and it's because of the way he shot it. I was telling us the way he shot it, and there's something about the way it looks that just kind of is off-putting to me. And then you had the same exact reaction to it. You were like, I don't know.
It just, and I think it is the way that it was shot. It just comes off as like not interesting, to be honest with you.
And I don't think it is. Yeah.
The subject matter itself is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not really religious or anything, but the subject matter of that is pretty interesting. Like that's obviously like a huge deal in Christianity and Catholicism, but it just didn't seem too compelling. And I know Jim Caviezel or whatever played Jesus and won, I think, awards for that movie, but it didn't do it for me. So I ended up
he went off the rails too. He's actually like a hardcore right wing,
is he,
like conspiracy guy? Yep.
That's interesting.
It is
I can't tell you how many movies he's been in, or he made one movie called Frequency with Dennis Quaid that wasn't bad.
That was an interesting story. Yeah, pretty creepy actually.
I couldn't tell you any other movies he was in besides that one. I think.
Nope. Well, I want to bring up a couple other ones. Have you gone back and watched Braveheart yet?
No, but it is on my list. I saw it and I was like, I just don't know if I have like 2.5 hours to devote to that at the moment. But I'm gonna get there for sure.
I watched that for the first time last year, and I thought it was okay. But I think he got better at directing after that movie. Maverick, awesome movie.
Oh, God,
I love it. It's so good.
That's a very understated movie for him.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen Air America with him and Robert Downey Jr.?
No.
Watch that one. That one's pretty fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I have to like find where these movies are too. Because I'm not paying for all of them because I'm torn. Right, I'm in the middle of my like 100 movie list that I'm trying to watch this year, and like I watched that movie Inside with Willem Dafoe, and I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
I did too.
The non-ending or whatever, spoiler alert for everybody, the non-ending was like pretty good, but
I love that. So not satisfying at all.
So I'm just like, I'm in the middle of this like movie crusade basically for this year, which will serve us well next year when we do our movie podcast for sure. But,
yeah. I just
you better catch up for this 2023 shit.
Well, yeah, because I watched a movie from like 54. It was called Thunder Bay with Jimmy Stewart, and it was a great movie, but I haven't really watched a lot of new stuff. I did watch a horror movie, but it was kind of a horror movie. It was a documentary or a mockumentary called Horror in the High Desert. The reason why I'm telling you this now is because I wanted you to watch it as a documentary and see if I could trick you into falling for it, because my girlfriend did afterwards. I told her, I'm like, it was fake. She's like, what? No. It's how well done it is, though. It's compelling. But other than that, yeah, I've just been watching a lot of old movies. So my big light item is actually Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I finally finished that, and performance issues aside, it's still a damn good game, and it's got the best story of any Star Wars property in like 10 years, which has that going for it.
You know what's interesting? I'm finding because I check Amazon like every day to see what is out, and there is a stunning amount of lower budget horror movies that come out. It's stunning. Like every day I can find, and this is just what's on Amazon, like on demand. And it's just like horror movie after horror movie after horror movie. Like I watched an experimental horror movie called The Outwaters. It was fucking terrible. Absolutely terrible. But it was getting like all these crazy good reviews and stuff. And it's basically like a found footage Blair Witchy type. It just, I don't know. It was annoying. Some of it didn't make sense. Like it's very experimental. It's not the only experimental horror movie I've ever watched, but it's just there's so much that comes out. It's really truly unbelievable.
Yeah, especially in that that the horror. Sorry if that was a beep you heard. The horror stuff, because the distribution is king, and you can make a horror movie on a low budget in a way you can't do with like basically any other story or any other camera or any other production.
Right.
Like there's all these edges.
And Amazon is very much a distributor, and they can probably just purchase these movies for like pennies on the dollar, and throw them up there, which I imagine is why that happens. But what's been really interesting lately is I'm sure that people know. Um, yeah, I saw that. All right, everybody. Well, Aaron's it's not recording. Mine is. It's still going. Anyway, that might be a good place to stop for us then. So everybody, Aaron's end stopped recording. So we're gonna call it here. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next week.